but it's a bit artificial anyway, because the $20 comes from friable sandstone and out of the dunes and so on. If you want to build something, you know that that's what it costs to be delivered, and there's not enough of that sand to do what I'm proposing here to protect the beaches. Okay, so to give you some sense of where these forecasts come from, we've got a model, right? For this one, it's a very simple model. It has to be to produce these regional scale or state, Southeast Australian scale estimates. So it includes the delivered cost of the sand, sea level rise. I mentioned this before. The way we have to put sand on the beach is the beach erodes when sea level goes up. So it's sand, a certain amount of sand is lost offshore to some distance, and there's uncertainty pertaining to that because of the nature of the model. The whole thing varies along the coast, so we have to take into account topography offshore, but we have to include the effects of uncertainty, which is why we do this simulation, running the model many times with these different estimates. But the effects in the current analysis haven't included things like increased storm erosion in the future, and the State Department of Environment and Climate Change and its various predecessors have been working extensively on this for a long time. Irregularities in seabed topography, it's arguable whether we need to know more for that. Maybe we do. Sand loss to estuaries, dunes and along shore, not included in this analysis. The analysis is simply addressing the effects of sea level rise. There may be some secondary effects that drive this particular process, and the effects of coastal evolution. This is the way the coast operates. We can expect to change for reasons we somewhat understand into the future. And so the model we use itself evolves into the future. Is this enough for planning decisions? Well, it's enough to work out how to protect the beaches, but it's not enough to draw up LEPs or to decide development applications in risky zones, because you need hard numbers. Councils, this is the thing they're crying out for, hard numbers on where to draw lines and such things. So they need estimates. For that, we have to go to a next generation of more sophisticated models that include all these other things that I left out or excluded from previous analysis. I've just mentioned all those things. Coastal evolution, to give some sense of that, we can't say what the seabed's going to respond like when sea level rises, how much sand it will sequester through erosion off the coast. So we need to take into account that variability. We need to take into account that the seabed may actually supply sand, as it's been doing for a long time already, in some cases, rather than simply being sink. And again, we need to take into account the uncertainty. This thing, the terrestrial topography, because, well, by the time we do any of this work, the terrain, the onshore terrain data, hopefully will be available. As you heard John Hudson say, we've already had, run by him, a pilot study, and we find for a few $1 million that we can cheaply collect the data that we need. So it doesn't really matter up in the hills, but down on the coast, which is going to be affected by sea level rise, we certainly need to know how high the ground is to be able to say anything sensible. We feed these data. In fact, we use the data the state government collected. John collected the late data, in this case the late quarry, to generate some forecasts. One of my PhD students, Mike Priscilla, did that. Included all the effects that I listed on the previous page. This is the LIDAR data is spatially averaged down to a seafloor profile. And this is the envelope of possibilities of where the sand or where the coastline and seabed will go to by 2100. Mike's about for a whole suite of sea level rises and other effects as well. And the interesting thing is, because the seabed can actually not only take sand, it can also provide sand. So we get low probability, but nevertheless some probability of there being accretion. A couple of years ago, a trial study without the benefit of this LIDAR data up the north coast of the National Park. So again, this is a risk curve. I flipped it around for some reason I can't go into now. But it turns out that